The latest tech,
I'm Alexa. I can answer your questions.
interviews,
And we are evolving, and we are seeing an amazing opportunity that is happening.
accessibility.
Accessibility is one of our core values. It's even a part of our mission statement.
This is Double Tap TV.
Welcome to another edition of Double Tap TV. Thank you guys, as always, each and every single week for joining us. This week is going to unfold a little bit differently because we're talking all about folding devices from Samsung and a couple bonus items to throw in that they announced earlier this summer. If you guys are Samsung fans or just want to get involved like you always do, our email address is feedback@ami.ca. If you want to reach out on Twitter, it's at Double Tap Canada. And don't forget that hashtag, which is AskDoubleTap, because that helps us get to your questions a lot quicker. I am Marco Flalo. By my side each and every single week, kind of unfolding, is Stephen Scott. Stephen, how you doing this week? This is an interesting topic because there's no question about the fact that we are, daily iPhone users. However, we tend to dabble into Android devices, especially into these Samsung ones when they do send us samples to use.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is an incredible array of devices that we're seeing again this time around from Samsung. Okay, look, let's be honest, not a huge surprise this time around because we expected some new devices, especially the Z Fold 3. We're going to talk about the Z Flip 3. We're going to talk about some new watches, though, today, which I think are rather interesting. I think that is probably the most interesting part. Although some would argue, and I know they would, that the phones are really impressive, and we'll get to that. I think, though, that the one thing that stands out for me with Samsung's announcement this time round is the partnership with Google. Now, obviously, Samsung and Google work together anyway, right? The idea that suddenly they work together, and that's news, isn't really news to me because they of course had to work together to create the Samsung devices because they're all based on Android, right, which is made by Google. So they've always worked together, but the difference here is the reason they're working more closely together is, as I think is maybe how they should put it, is because they're creating this what they call the One UI experience, which is integrating what Samsung have created, the overlays, the skins, the elements of Android that have been added on to Samsung specific devices. What they've done here is they've actually worked together with Google to integrate that into Android so that Android more generally can benefit across all the device range with all these features. But of course they always begin on the Samsung devices. So I think that's the key thing, the key aspect of this that I'm really excited about.
A couple months ago, Stephen, we featured a really cool episode where we actually flew virtually all the way to Korea, and we spoke to a couple of representatives from the Samsung mothership in Korea and talked to them about how they feel about accessibility in general. Let's play a clip from that episode so you can catch up.
Our interest in accessibility started to grow when the transition from feature phones to smartphones began to take place. Unlike feature phones, it wasn't possible to tactually identify the keypad or control buttons on smartphones, so the company delved deep to come up with ways to address this problem. Moreover, the 2010 enaction of the 21st Century Communications and Video Accessibility Act in the U.S. pushed us to strengthen mobile accessibility in line with the specific standards and guidelines laid out by the law. That's when I began my career in accessibility, by joining the task force following the CVAA enactment. We did a lot of research and listened to many users to meet the requirements under the CVAA, which enabled us to shape the accessibility features on our mobile devices. Recently, Samsung has been collaborating with Google to offer the best accessibility on mobile devices, and we plan on developing new features together or integrating different features.
So that's just a taste of how they look at accessibility when it comes to Samsung as a whole. Of course, if you want to see the rest of that episode, you can download the AMI TV app, or of course you can go to youtube.com/accessiblemedia and check out the Double Tap TV playlist. But it gives you an example of how most companies these days are baking the accessibility DNA into the product. So I think it's natural when you think back to the relationship with Google and Samsung that you talked about earlier, that they are going to be working together. I'm curious though what your thoughts are are on how you think other manufacturers are going to take to this. Are they going to look at it and say, well, why not collaborate with us? Why Samsung? Are they that big? Or do you think that people recognize that there's this kind of symbiotic relationship between Samsung and Google that's just inherently there?
Well, I think we're hearing from Samsung PR on this, right? So obviously Samsung will always tell us how wonderful their relationship is with Google, and I'm sure if you look at LG PR, they'll say the same thing, as will other manufacturers, Motorola or whoever else. They'll all tell you that they have great relationships with Google. They all have to, because like I say, their software is based on Google's operating system, so they have to have a relationship in place. It's just how you want to spin the PR on it, right? But I think fundamentally what Samsung have done here is they've maybe gone a bit further than other manufacturers, in that instead of just creating a device and then loading the software on, and some manufacturers have gone a bit further, don't get me wrong, other manufacturers have added their own overlays and their own skins to the devices to give a bit of a unique feel. But I think Samsung have gone further in terms of features. Now, in terms specifically of accessibility, as we talked about in that special Double Tap TV episode, what got me was that they were actually creating accessible tools that were actually being built back into Android. So it wasn't just a case of, they were just adapting the software. They were actually creating new versions of that software and then, well, I don't know if giving back is the right word to use, because I'm not quite sure what exactly changes hands here, but who cares, right? At the end of the day, we get these wonderful features from Samsung back into Google, which then goes out to all the other devices. The screen reader, for example, Samsung developed their own, whilst Google and Android had the TalkBack screen reader. But, there were things that Samsung had managed to achieve that Google wanted. So they worked together and they built it in so it could make it a better experience for all Android users. That's got to be the right way to do this, and it's the ethical thing to do.
Yeah, and it makes sense why they'd be working together. But for the benefit of people who don't know the history of the devices we're going to be talking about today, a couple of years ago, these are the Z Fold Flip, Z Fold 3, and the Z Flip 3, or if you're in Canada, the Z Fold 3 and the Z Flip 3. These devices, when they first were announced, number one, expensive devices, and it was originally the folding one that kind of folded out the middle that was announced. It was plagued with hinge issues. Things were getting caught behind the hinge. There was this plastic film on the screen that people thought was a screen protector that they ripped off, and therefore it killed the screen. And this happened, by the way, before it even made it to public hands. This were reviewers that were getting their hands on these early devices. And Samsung subsequently stopped production of the devices. They went back to the drawing board. They redesigned the hinge a bit. They extended that screen protector type film that was on it, and they reissued it to reviewers. And the feeling was that this was an okay phone. It was a good first stab at what was going on. But now we're into our third generation, and Samsung has seemed to, at least on the surface, without getting our hands on them right away, really refine the process here. There's a much more durable screen. The actual fold is less apparent on the screen, although still apparent when you're looking at the screen from certain angles. And that hinge really does blend into the device itself when it is open. And of course, I'm talking about the folding one, which folds out, I guess, vertically, versus the one that kind of flips down in the old Motorola Razr style, which also has a similar hinge. But again, when open, you kind of don't even realize it's there, whereas on the first generations, it was very apparent that they were there. So overall, what's your feeling in the concept of bringing back foldable devices?
Well, bringing back is really only true in the sense of the Flip, isn't it? I mean, I don't think there's been anything else that's folded out the way, almost like a book. I can't think of anything similar to that. I mean, there have been a couple of attempts at that design, I guess. But no, I think that bringing that style in is interesting, ultimately because it gives people a greater screen experience. I think if you are obsessed with the visuals, right? So let me split this down the middle. Let's see what's the best phone for you versus the best phone for me. I think for you, the Fold is going to be a great phone for you. It's going to give you so much screen real estate. You're going to be able to enjoy great content on there. You can do multiple tasks at the same time. Whereas the Flip, I think, is more useful to me because it makes the phone smaller, but it gives more function to the phone because you've got that cover view that I'm going to talk about a bit later on the device as well. So I actually think that there's a lot of benefits to both. If you're obsessed with the visuals and you want great content, go for the Fold. If you just want portability, ease of use, something you can stow away easily, then you're looking at the Flip.
Okay, let's take a quick break. It is Double Tap TV. He is Stephen Scott. I am Mark Aflalo. Again, you guys have an opinion. We want to hear from you. It is feedback@ami.ca. That's, of course, our email address. On Twitter, don't forget to follow us. It's @DoubleTapCanada, and use that hashtag, which is AskDoubleTap. We're going to take a deep dive into these devices and let them unfold themselves.
For more great Double Tap TV content, visit ami.ca/doubletap. This is Double Tap TV.
Welcome back to Double Tap TV. Thank you guys, as always, for being with us each and every single week. Again, I'm going to tell you the email address. I'm going to tell you the Twitter handle because I know you guys have an opinion. I know especially when it comes to mobile devices, the emails don't stop. So email feedback@ami.ca. Tell us all your opinions, why Stephen is always wrong, why I'm always right, or you can side with Sean Priest over at Double Tap Canada.
No one's doing that.
Of course, on Twitter, ignore that voice. Of course, on Twitter, it is @DoubleTapCanada with the hashtag #AskDoubleTap. I am Mark Aflalo, and that disembodied voice you just heard is now on the screen. Stephen Scott, welcome back. So, Samsung unveiled these devices as they normally do in advance of any signs of iPhones. Actually, normally we hear the rumors of new iPhones, and Samsung suddenly has an Unpacked event. Happened kind of late in July, early August, so they got a head start, and they get the center stage to themselves, which is why they do this, and they do it intentionally. So we've got the Z Fold 3, and we've got the Z Flip 3, and we've got some watches as well. So let me talk about the Fold 3 for a second, because this, as Stephen alluded to before the break, or not alluded to, he actually said it, this is a new form factor. I mean, this is something we've only seen in the past couple of years. It was first in the Z Fold, and then we saw the Surface Duo and some other companies attempt. I mean, I think we saw, was it not HTC? I can't remember what device it was folding on the other side. Oh, it was TCL, not TCL. Huawei. Huawei had the Mate, a Mate X that folded around back so the screen was on the outside, right, Stephen? And that kind of went nowhere. We haven't heard anything about that device.
No.
So let me describe this one to you while we show you some stuff on the screen here. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful design. The hinge really does blend into it when it's open. It has slimmed down a bit, so you've got a little bit less weight, and it's going to feel a bit svelter in your hands when it comes to the folding element of it. And because it's kind of thin and narrow when it's folded, it does kind of hide away in your pocket. Not so much like the Flip, because, you know, we're used to those clamshell devices. You know, again, beautiful screen, 5G support on both of these devices this year. And, you know, incredible feature set because they've got that really, really fast processor on board that makes computing and everything kind of, it almost disintegrates into the background, right, Stephen, at this point? You almost forget about what processor, how much RAM, because they're loading these devices with way more than they'll ever need. And they work and they function almost like mini computers, or actually like mini computers, because that is one of the things that really kind of surprised me, is that they're trying to sell this Fold almost like a multitasking workstation, kind of like the Surface Duo from Microsoft, where you flip it open and you kind of put it sideways and you could type on one screen while viewing content on the other. Which is interesting because I feel like the screen size is not big enough to really warrant that. What are your thoughts?
Well, I was going to ask you this because to me, from my understanding of what this looks like and the pictures I've tried to look at here to make sense of it, is it like a square design? I mean, is that what I'm looking at here? It's like almost a square, and I think if that's the case, well, how do you get? I mean, watching a movie on that, for example, in widescreen just wouldn't look right, would it?
Well, no, that's the thing, is that it almost reminds me of that original Nokia communicator that debuted in the movie The Saint.
Yes.
Years and years and years ago, which had that keyboard on one side and that narrow screen on the top. It's the same thing.
That.
It is very much like a square when it's opened. So you do get this kind of half screen on the top, half screen on the bottom to be able to use in different ways. Of course, the form factor makes it really nice in your hands when it's closed because it's thinner and it's narrower. But as you said, it's kind of hard to sell that as a full viewing experience when it's open if you're just using the half screen. Now, of course, use the whole screen, hop on a Bluetooth keyboard, do, you know, marvelous things, enjoy your media, read newspapers, read your emails. Great, but I don't think this is really a two-screen device. You need to look at devices like the Surface Duo as a two-screen device because there's a physical line down the middle and you're getting two really big screens next to each other. This is just two little screens, or one giant screen that, you know, folds out, that really work together nicely as one, as opposed to being able to use it as two. Now, we also have S Pen support now, although we don't have anywhere to put that S Pen, but we have S Pen support. Although, in all the demonstrations that we've seen when they've demoed the S Pen, there's a very significant lag on this screen technology. So I don't know how useful that's going to be to people. I think it's a nice gimmick, and you have to buy another $80 case in order just to hold that S Pen somewhere. But really, like, this is kind of blurring that line between gimmick and usefulness to me. I don't see where it fits in the market.
That's my feeling, and it's really interesting to hear you say that, because you've had the Surface Duo, and I think that's the closest experience either of us have had to this kind of form factor. And it sounds to me like what you're saying is you want two distinct screens rather than this kind of folded together approach, this kind of gelled approach.
Yeah, totally. And listen, at the end of the day, you're getting a beautiful 6.7-inch screen. You're getting lots of color options, which Samsung likes to do so it fits your lifestyle. You get that great smartphone experience. Whether you want to spend the money is an entirely different thing, because you're paying a high price tag for a phone like this. We're talking about, $1,500, $1,600, $1,700 Canadian when it hits the market. Obviously, you can find subsidies here and there, and it will go on sale. But is that the money you're going to shell out for a phone like this? Is it the feature that you're paying for, or is it the phone and the innards and the way you use it that you're paying for? This is what really has me torn. Now, this might change entirely when I get my hands on the device. I may hold it and say, oh my God, you know what? This is really, really cool. But I think I might actually opt for the folding device because it's more familiar to me. It brings me back to the Motorola Razrs and brings me back to those Motorola flip phones that you just flip open and suddenly you have your experience. And as you said earlier, portability. You could pop that in your pocket. You could have your Bluetooth headphone in and just run. It's not as bulky. It is a better form factor, in my opinion, and something that, okay, still expensive in Canadian dollars, but I see the usefulness of that versus the actual fold.
Yeah, I'm far more excited about the Z Flip 3, which also has got 5G built in as well. It's a much more classic mobile phone design. Goes right back to those days of the flip phone, or as some called it, the clamshell design. Let's talk through this, because the outside screen on the phone is called the cover view, which gives you lots of information without having to open up the phone. This is a really cool feature. The cover view on this new Z Flip 3 is around 4 times the size of its predecessor, and offers notifications and messages right there on the outside of the device. Now, once you get round to opening up the phone, you're presented with a beautiful 6.7-inch AMOLED screen and a powerful Snapdragon processors built in there to do all the hard work behind the scenes. Now, you also get the phone in a number of colours, including cream, lavender, green, phantom black, as well as grey, white and light pink, exclusively from Samsung Direct. I know that is your favourite there, Mark. So that's how it looks, right? And I must say, the style and look of these phones do make them pretty awesome. Samsung know how to make smart and sexy looking devices, okay? No doubt at all. There are some nice features though, especially if you love taking pictures. You can take selfies hands-free using flex mode of the phone, which is where you can partially open the device and benefit from, letting it stand up by itself or make it easier to hold, or you can keep the phone folded and take selfies that way. You can even take videos that way too by double-clicking the power key. But it's not just about pictures and videos. You can use the cover view to start a workout or change music tracks, while wearing, of course, your Samsung Galaxy Buds. And of course, the size will be the main attraction for guys who want a smart and easy, to use phone that fits in the jeans pocket, or for women who want to carry a small and light purse. Ideal for that. The phone is definitely all about the style and the specs inside, especially that bright and crisp AMOLED display with a 120Hz screen, meaning smooth scrolling through all your content, means it's got some substance too. As for price, you're talking $12,599 for the 128 gig model, or $13,299 for the 256 gig model. So definitely one to consider. It's still a high price for this device, Mark.
Yeah, that's still a high price for these devices. Okay, we've talked phones. It's time to talk watches. Let's take a quick break here on Double Tap TV. He is Stephen Scott. I am Mark Aflalo, and you guys at home are anxiously anticipating us talking about these watches. So stick around. We'll be back in just a moment.
For more great Double Tap TV content, visit ami.ca/doubletap. This is Double Tap TV.
We're back on Double Tap TV. Mark Aflalo and Stephen Scott by your side this week. I'm rushing a little bit because we've talked so much about phones that we really don't have too much time to talk about the watches. Stephen, tell me what makes these watches different? Tell me everything that you know about them, because you are far more intelligent than I am.
Well, I don't think that's the case, but I have looked at the press release. Yes, not one, but two new watches are out from Samsung this year, Mark. The design of the new Watch 4 certainly appears to me to be much more sleek than previous versions, which were quite bulky. These are much thinner in design. They've got interchangeable bands. I wonder who gave them the idea that they could make watch bands into a cash cow, but there you go. Anyways, back to the design, and we're looking at a 44mm size display in a round clock-style fashion rather than Apple's sort of standard square design for its Apple Watch. As well as a new design, it's also the first Samsung smartwatch to run the new Wear OS, powered by Samsung and built jointly with Google. Now, the platform lets you use popular Google apps like Google Maps and Galaxy services as well, like Samsung Pay, SmartThings, and Bixby. The new platform also includes support for third-party apps like Adidas Running, Calm, Strava, Spotify, all available from the Google Play Store right on your wrist. So they've combined the two platforms into something that Samsung say is much more intuitive and expansive. Now, Samsung are also promoting health and well-being, as often is the case with these types of devices, right? As well as the usual features you've come to expect, such as heart rate, ECG, blood oxygen monitoring. There's a new bioactive sensor built into Wear OS Watch, which promises to offer a more helpful understanding of someone's overall well-being. What that means in reality, we'll find out. There's also a new body composition measurement tool to give you a better sense of your overall health and fitness. I will never go near it. And when you're not hitting the gym, you can do workouts at home by connecting your Watch 4 to your Samsung Smart TV. Of course you can, where calorie counts and heart rate metrics are displayed on screen while you work out or dance or whatever it is you do to stay active. And when it's time for bed, Watch 4 can monitor the detail of your sleep pattern and even your snoring, but don't tell my wife.
Okay, Stephen. Well, we're hopefully going to get hands-on with these watches really soon. You guys, again, if you've got an opinion, let us know. It's feedback@ami.ca, of course, our email address, and on Twitter, we are at DoubleTapCanada with the hashtag AskDoubleTap. On behalf of Stephen Scott, I am Mark Aflalo. Thank you for watching this week's edition of Double Tap TV.
Hosted by Mark Aflalo and Stephen Scott. Editing, Jordan Steves and Mark Aflalo. Voiceover, Anna Vicino. Integrated Described Video Specialist, Ron Rickford. Coordinating Producer, Jennifer Johnson. Director, Production, Kara Nye. Director, Programming, Brian Perdue. VP, Content Development and Programming, John Melville. President and CEO, David Arrington. Copyright 2021, Accessible Media, Inc.